Coffee and Clarity. So it's a little bit of a conversation just to introduce you to a few of us around who you may not be familiar with at TLMI, and then go into an update from our partner Brian Vickers regarding tariffs and other legislative items that are at play. So we're joined today by Mark Glendenning, who is our current TLMI Chairman and CEO of Inland Packaging, and Brian Vickers, who is with Pace LLP, and he's a partner of TLMI. But first, maybe just a little bit about me. Some of you have known me for a while, and some of you are seeing me for the first time. My name is Lene Keene, as I mentioned. I have been in the label and packaging industry for 25 plus years. I have a degree in electrical engineering and an MBA that served me well to get a great job out of college. And I haven't practiced electrical engineering for quite a while. My husband is one, so it's redundant in our household. But certainly great training. And in the industry, I worked first in liquid packaging, so extruding polymers onto bleached paperboard, making milk cartons and juice cartons, your to-go cups, and then had the pleasure of joining UPM Raflatac and worked for them for 20 years, which brought me into this label industry. My background has been in operations, and then I navigated from operations over to the commercial side of the business through product management, marketing, a business leader, strategic sales, and vice president of sales before leaving to spend time with my two boys, of one of which just graduated high school. And next month I will celebrate my 5th anniversary with TLMI. So it's been an exciting time and love this industry, passionate about it, and get to learn something every day. So I'd like to introduce at this time Mark Glendenning. Um, he is joining me this morning, and as mentioned, he is the CEO and owner of Inland Packaging. And just want to ask Mark a few questions so he could tell the group about himself. So, Mark, thank you for joining me this morning. And just if you would you share with the group a little bit about your role in your business, your role at TLMI, your family business, and how you actually got here into this industry?
That's quite a loaded question, but I'll try. Um, it's a family-owned business. Funny enough, I grew up working in it. Never thought I would be back actually in it as a career. And unlike you, Lene, I'm an industrial engineer who started my career in the electrical industry. Yep, can't make this.
Love it.
And ended up wanting to get back to something smaller. I was working for a very large corporation. It was very different than I grew up with. And so as fate would have it, a large customer of Inland's moved their headquarters from La Crosse, Wisconsin to Chicago, Illinois, where I was. And that's how I actually ended up back with Inland, funny enough. So then was able to move back to La Crosse, became president in 99, CEO in 2001. So I've been running the business, for a little over 20 years. So that kind of is Inland, and very excited, happy, proud, all of those things to be in the label industry, because it's just such a wonderful industry and it's changed so much. And that's really cool to see too, right along with TLMI. And speaking of TLMI, we've been members now for about 13 years, 12 years. And we were members of LPIA, which was basically a cut and stack, more offset focused trade group that was really the first one to get M&A'd out of existence. And so we actually merged into TLMI in 2012, 2013. And that's when I started becoming active in TLMI. One of the big reasons I was excited about TLMI is Mr. Vickers, and we'll talk about that. The whole fact that the importance of really understanding regulatory affairs, government, etc., had really taken root at TLMI. Even though it was fledgling, it was coming on quickly and nicely. And having Brian here with us and having the power of RAC behind our industry is critically important, especially because we're made up of so many small family businesses, and very few of us have the power individually to really understand what's happening legislatively, uh, whether it is tax issues affecting, say, the business directly, and or things like sustainability and other regulations affecting our customers and the products we produce. So that's where I think there's huge power in being part of an association. Before I go on any further, though, I do want to say that I'm joining you guys from uh, uh, Amplify. I'm sitting in the TLMI booth. I actually have Jessica and Dale right here next to me. And what I have to do is give a huge thank you to the team. And Lene talked about the fact that intent was to co-locate. This had always been a personal, in-person show or print thing. And the fact that we were able to pivot as quickly as we were to something online says a lot about the association and a lot about the team. So I want to thank the team a lot. Lene, back
Thank
to you.
All right. Thank you, Mark. I have just one more question for you to share with the group for some insight. In October, you took over as chairperson of the board of directors for TLMI from Tim McDonough, and you have a 2-year term. So you're 6 months in, and just wanted to see what is your vision or what you hope to achieve under your chairmanship of TLMI for the next 18 months.
That's a loaded question, Lene, but I'll try to answer it. And it's a bit loaded because first and foremost, I want to provide continuity. And I think in the past, the expectation of the board or the chair coming in was, okay, what are they going to put us through? And I don't want that. I really want to see us, have consistency. And we've got such a good strategic plan. We've got a lot of clarity around what we're trying to do, that I want to make sure that I'm here to help foster that continuation of going from where TLMI has always been to where TLMI is trying to get to, without a lot of disruption. And we're also lucky to have the next two chairs, the two people following me in leadership, already picked out. And so we really feel like we've got 5 years of continuity, and really excited about that. And really, what I'm wanting to do is make sure that we're providing all the value we can provide to members. And we're not going to lose what always made TLMI special, which is the networking and really being able to grow your network with all of the great people in our industry, but also create even more value, and especially deeper into companies. And I think this is a great example where we pivot from in person, that's harder to get to virtual, where we can have almost anybody from any company join for any session. I think it says a lot about where we're going.
Great. Thank you. I appreciate it. And now I'd like to introduce Brian Vickers from Pace LLP. Brian has been a partner of ours since 2019. Brian, you're still on mute, so if you'll take yourself off mute. One thing I'd like you to do, Brian, is, before I ask you a question, is Mark referred to RAC. So that is Regulatory Affairs Committee. We renamed it. It used to be called Government Affairs. That just didn't garner the interest or people willing to be on the committee. So Brian was often the committee of one. So we changed the name to RAC, and that seems to resonate with folks. So Brian, thank you for leading the effort there and for leading RAC. We just had our board meeting up in DC and had the opportunity to spend time with you at your office and learned even more about you. So if you would, before we roll into your slides, could you just share with the attendees today a brief bit about your background, just how long you've been at Pace and how you got there?
Sure. Thank you, Lene and Mark, and good morning, everyone. So, packaging's a funny world, right? And it's really connected, right? You've got labels, packaging, closures, equipment, and everything else that supports the industry. And my time in overall packaging goes back to 2001, when I started answering the phones for the Glass Packaging Institute as part of a management company. And over time, started to send emails for the bosses there. Brian, could you do this? Brian, could you do that? And as I got into the middle parts of the 2000s, there's some involvement with the committees and the folks that are active from the business side within the associations, which is so important to have those folks volunteering their time to chair committees and sit on boards. And who do I meet via email in probably 2008 or even seven? Mark Lendenning, Inland Label, before it was Inland Packaging, and a couple years after that, on our marketing calls for that association, I was sending out emails to Roz Bandy, who was the new head of sustainability over at Avery Dennison. So it really it's a small world, and there's a reason why I think people, whether they move from companies or industries or work in between industries, is a connection. It's manufacturing, it's packaging. There's a lot of cooperation that happens among the competition between the material types on a variety of things, and we've only seen that increase over the past 5 or 6 years with some of the outside third-party resources that really work for everyone. That could be resource recycling systems, the recycling partnership. These organizations get it. They know that everybody kind of needs help in different areas, and it's become much more uh, the packaging association landscape, much more cooperative, less cagey, and a real kind of value to kind of drive everybody together. And so my role with TLMI, and I've been with TLMI in some shape or capacity as the government affairs program was getting started back in 2000, I want to say about 13, 14,
Okay.
maybe. But I've really enjoyed seeing that grow and really all the champions that we have now, obviously with our current co-chairs, but the past leadership of the board and our earlier RAC and government affairs co-chairs that really wanted to see it grow and gave us an opportunity to show up at the meetings and really be part of the process and engagement. So I'm delighted to be a part of the TLMI team here uh, and yeah, so that's what I got. Open for
Great.
questions. I see Lene's got the thing up, so happy to go through some slides too.
Yeah, why don't we go ahead and you can start with your slides, and I am sure we're going to be watching chat here, Brian, and I'm
Okay.
sure what you share with us will lead to lots of questions.
Sure. Yeah, happy to do that. So, I'm going to hit the major buckets. It's kind of a shortened version of what we would do on our quarterly rack calls and information out. All of this will be posted on TLMI Community, as Lene mentioned earlier, under the rack division. That's everything for us is housed there. I post it usually the same day, and this is no exception. So, talk a little about tariff and trade. We're going to talk about the tax bill, which has some implications for the member companies and the business operations, and then and what we're seeing in the regulatory and legislative space on a broader kind of scale, without getting too much into the details. Okay. So, well, I'll start here when we talk about the tariffs and trade, and we're going to go back to, and some of you may have come across this if you were on our quarterly call. You got some information on this, but back in 2019, TLMI put out a statement on tariff policy, and this would have been year and or so, about a year and a half after the 25% tariffs under Section 232 were imposed. Sorry, the Section 301 tariffs were imposed on Chinese imports for most of the material coming in at 25%. And we decided when we looked at it, we didn't want to be anti-tariff. We didn't necessarily want to be pro-tariff either. So we looked at it from a fairness and perspective and an opportunity to engage perspective. So this really is centered on due process, right? So before a tariff, and there's some details on the slide here, but before a tariff is issued, the TLMI as an association would want to make sure that there's, proper justification. Um, and that includes documentation as to why the tariff is necessary. And connected to that is an understanding of the supply chain. What is that product being imported, whether it's a raw material or finished product? What is it being used for? Why is it potentially, made in the European Union or China or elsewhere? Um, and then an opportunity for stakeholders to engage and to provide comment to the USTR, the Office of the United States Trade Representative. This can include a hearing session, a comment period, but really an opportunity for engagement on from industry's perspective. So before these tariffs are put into place, there's at least there's at least some background provided and a chance to provide input. Uh, the board took a look at this at the May meeting in Washington, D.C., and decided that word for word it would be reissued, and that's what you have on the screen. We didn't change anything in there. And again, while the politics of tariffs have changed a bit, really, I think from a business perspective, you have to really understand why the tariff is being used. And when we look at part of this, we kind of think about um, all of the reasonings, right? I've initially it was to pay down the national debt, then it was to pay for the tax bill, then it was to ensure manufacturing comes back into the U.S., and then it was a mix of all three. So a little bit of certainty here. And Lene, if you want to hop to the next slide, uh, kind of speaks to where things are at. And, as the bullet points point out here, right, the landscape politically is vastly different right now than it was in 2017, uh, especially with respect to tariffs and the hesitancy, I think, of certain organizations and companies to push back against them. Um, we had been hopeful for an opportunity to see a tariff exclusion process, just an opportunity again to engage specifically and to provide that ability to the companies to do that. But that's not been made available, and it's become very clear over the past several months that that's probably not forthcoming, right? So we are going with the direction that the administration goes, and we're going to be subject a bit to their separate trade negotiations and deals, whether that's with China, the EU, United Kingdom, and um, and we are coming up on some deadlines here at the end of June and July, uh, where I am hopeful they will be extended because it doesn't seem that we're close to an actual deal outside of a deal in principle with a couple countries and regions. And as many of you know, a 10% tariff on the EU, while it may seem small, it's not if you're bringing in an expensive piece of equipment that's primarily or only manufactured in a country within that region. So uh, we're hoping cooler heads prevail before we get into summer. I like hearing signs of progress, but I also am also waiting to see what that actually results into a new rate before we put anything out. USMCA exemptions seem safe for now. That's a good thing, but we don't know where that moves as we head into the middle of summer here, and if they'll be removed as a potential leverage point. We've seen aluminum and steel tariffs double, effective from all countries, including Canada and Mexico. So while we have some shielding within the Northern American supply chain and the customer chains, more certainty would be better, and uncertainty is what we have for the most part right now. So I put this out if if any and I know several of you do. You follow the imports coming in from January of this year through January of 2025. So sorry, the first quarter of 2025 over the past several years. And this is one of the key inputs, the self-adhesive paper and rolls or sheets. the HS code that ends in 2100. And there's a few others, but this is one of the primary ones that the members ask me about, and then I do some looking into. And this was the first quarter of how things went. We saw an increase in Canadian imports, a decrease in Chinese imports, and an increase in Mexican imports. Last week we got the April data, and the April data would include for almost the majority of the month a 145% tariff on imports from China collectively. If you added up all of the rates, that's when the US and China relationship was probably at its trade-related worst. And while those have been reduced for that month, everything coming in was a fairly staggering 145%. And that's even for the lower cost per unit volume items. When you add that up, it's a lot of money. So people ask me, well, is it going to work? Is it effective? And I said, well, we'll have to wait and see the April data. And Lene, if you want to hop to the next slide, um, what we saw here was despite this tariff, the imports of the same material from China compared to April of 2024 were up 36%. They were also up significantly from the previous 2 months. Now, and so what does this mean, right? And I was hoping I could just have a nice clean theory here as to the levels dropping down and the tariffs actually having some kind of impact, but I'm not positive that's the case. What I believe might have happened is the notice of the 145% tariff came in so late that a lot of these orders I know were placed in March, right? And they don't get the tariff assessed on the product until it hits the ports and hits customs. So I believe that is kind of what happened here. I think I think this was a push to get it in before April, and May data will tell us more. We get May data the first week of July, so we can see if that will level back off and go down. And there's just, several companies or importers, distributors, what have you, that just not could not get it here in time. And so that's my theory for now, but we'll see if the data tells us another theory in May. And this is true of the accompanying substrate with this as well. And we'll have some more of this information on the rack site, but this is just kind of a highline takeaway that not everything, I guess, falls into place like you might think sometimes, and certainly didn't fall into place like I thought it would here. So, okay, the tax bill, everybody's watching this. Um, uh, so here, and I'm going to talk a little bit about the cost, but this is where things are at with the House bill right now, which the Senate will be considering. Um, these parts will stay the same, and the Senate will take a look at them to see what they can do. The pass-throughs are 23%, and that's permanent. That's important. Small, mid-sized companies, my own included, and others are organized as pass-throughs, and 20% of passing through your income before you assess the taxes is very helpful. So that's up to 23%. They have basically gone back to the R&D expensing and the bonus depreciation and reinstated those through 2029. The Senate would like to, and I don't know how they're going to do it in the pay for section. The Senate would like to make that permanent. They feel like these are big purchases planned out more than 4 or 5 years, and so they'd like to have that made permanent. I'd expect to see some new language when the Senate Finance Committee, which is the tax writing committee on the Senate side, releases their bill. Freedom to invest in tomorrow's Workforce Act, that's staying in there. Allowable investments of 529 funds to be applied to qualified workforce training programs. That will all be defined by the Department of Labor, but this is really great news. I know TLMI's Workforce Development Committee has spent considerable time with their members and leadership on, ways to expand, the workforce and to bring in folks that that can be trained, and training and apprenticeships and certifications are not always free. So the ability to use a traditional 529 fund from your state and apply it to a post-secondary technical technical certificate training at school is going to be really helpful. And the nice thing is this doesn't cost anything, right? This is existing funds that you have, so there's not going to be hand-wringing about how much this costs. It just kind of opens up the door to yeah, eligible spending. Final note here, I know that Lene likes this, I like it as well. Avoiding pay-fors that includes reducing or limiting nonprofit tax status, which was talked to be at 1.21%. They wanted to make it the corporate rate. Thankfully, those discussions went away. Fringe benefits, if you are a nonprofit offering parking or transportation benefits to your employees, you may not be able to write them off at tax time. Uh, but that is very, very minor considering what they were looking at and what was under serious consideration. So that's where the bill is now. And then on the next slide, we've got what are they doing this week? So the parliamentarian on the Senate side has been in discussions with House leadership and basically said some of these provisions are will be considered fatal flaws to the bill, and the Senate could vote on it, pass it, but it would not be able to pass with 50 votes. It would not be under reconciliation rules, and it would need 60 votes or more and go under traditional filibuster rules in the Senate, which is why it's so difficult to pass most things in the Senate. You need 60 votes. Otherwise, one senator can filibuster on the Senate floor for eternity, and folks just give up and go home. So there, obviously, the Republicans don't have the margin for 60 votes in the Senate. This bill barely got out of the House. So they are voting this week on an amended small package, not the entire bill again, just an amended package which removes provisions within defense spending and policies primarily that the Senate parliamentarian said are outside of the scope of a budget reconciliation 50 votes or greater Senate bill, right? So that will go there. And also going in there will be the Department of Government Efficiency, the DOGE rescissions. And this formalizes into statute what is already being done um, by members of Congress or by the agencies independently, but it will provide the ability for Congress with a simple majority in the House and Senate to vote to disallow previously approved funds, whether they were appropriated by Congress in a previous year or approved in a manner of grants and vetted and included in law. This will allow them to kind of roll back the clock in a fairly easy manner to rescind those those items of funding, whatever they may be for. Um, so that's what's happening this week. And then as we go closer to the July 4th recess, we'll see the changes in the bill from the Senate, and they'll continue to debate. Maybe not making that July 4th deadline, but there's a possibility. They have about 2.5 weeks, and they will work right up into it. EPR, so 12 states have introduced it, 7 states it's in. This is something we look at frequently and more frequently than just monthly on the rack calls with quarterly rack calls with our the folks that join those from the various companies. The fees and the registrations are starting. So your customers in many instances have started registering, or they should have started registering for several of these states. The nice thing about having Circular Action Alliance run this is once your customer, a brand who is registering, does it for one state, they can make that applicable for all the other states that they're overseeing, which are all of them that have decided on a PRO at this point, right? So the PRO is the organization that says, that keeps track of the money, that keeps track of your brands and customers that you're selling your labels to, how much they owe. And they're also the organization that will work with the brands to determine things like label recycling compatibility, if that has an impact on their cost in selling into the state, and how you can make sure that your label's not being disruptive to the recycling process if it is, and to work with your brand. So um, there's so much more complex information about these programs, but that's really the key thing that you need to know. You may be hearing from your brand saying, we're registered now. And we start July 1 in Oregon paying fees into the state based on our sales, right, of covered product and how they want to kind of divvy that up between units, weight, and packaging type. So more to come as we roll into the second half of the year, but it's really getting started. California will have their final rules in place by the end of this year. And so while they've been delayed a bit with their EPR program, it has not by any means been rolled back or going away. And we'll have an opportunity to see the final rules probably in December, early December of this year. So Prop 65, we talk about this a lot. This is another big legislative regulatory bucket. Uh, we have now a little over 2 years, 2.5 years, January 1st, 2028. There are new rules for notifications, whether that's in store, whether that's on package. If you're selling into the state, and even if your customer brand or the retail outlet is responsible for uh, posting the information, uh, please be aware that there are changes that need to be made, and they're very specific changes. And it's listing a chemical that required the notification in the first place that has to be out there. Uh, there are various revisions to font and sizing and placement as well. All of this is explained on the Prop 65 website. I know our rec co-committee chairs we're hoping to get someone from the outside who's kind of an expert in Prop 65 compliance to come speak on one of our webinars to educate everybody with the goal, as is with other, cases, making sure that you have the information that you need for your suppliers and your customers, right? That's part of the value with TLMI. So you have the right info, and they're not coming to you December, 29th, 2027, asking for a bunch of changes or not sure what's going on. So we really want to push these through. One final note. And this is something we don't talk about much, but it's really how the state relies on enforcement, and they call them headhunter firms, bounty hunter firms, that sort of thing. But they are supported by the state's attorney general office, and they go to stores and they test all sorts of things. And what we have noticed in their 60-day notice of warnings lately is they are looking at uh, receipt paper at all sorts of consumer outlets for presence of BPS. Now that's not illegal. You can sell BPS, BPA, the BPS within California. There's nothing preventing that. However, you have to have a notification. A notification in this instance, if it's receipt paper, would be a little placard at the checkout, right? Kind of giving you a heads up that this receipt paper has, what the rest of the California warnings currently say. And they're testing them. They're sending out warning notices, which require a few things. If the company doesn't want to go into suits, lawsuits, or litigation, acknowledgement of receipt, an appropriate approved civil penalty, which would be approved by the state of California, and a whole host of things. So if you're selling, and it's not just BPS, if you're selling a covered chemical to a customer in the state, or that will end up on a shelf in the state of California, please provide them with the information that they need to inform their shoppers. And what does that mean? Well, it's a variety of things you could do. And California on the OEHH website has everything there. and you can take a look at it. And if you have questions, you can ask me, and I can try to help as well. But you need to start providing information if you're captured here, because what'll happen is you're probably not going to get the notice, but your customer, your brand will, and then it becomes much more difficult at that point. Not impossible, but it's I'd imagine something that you'd want to avoid. So we're here to help with that, but please keep this in mind. It's a fairly easy test for folks walking into a store. So, and Lene, I think that's it. I believe.
Yeah.
Oh, last one. The United Printing United Alliance, Printing United Alliance, Capitol Hill Flying, Elizabeth Lyons and her team on Capitol Hill. What a great event! Tyler and I from Burke and Will were able to attend on behalf of TLMI and kind of promote some of the issues that both organizations support. And you kind of, you can see on the screen workforce development, tariff, trade, tax. We're very similarly aligned with PUA on a lot of these issues. So nice opportunity to line up in DC. And I'm sure the RAC and the board may want to talk more about that in the future and how we can kind of continue that momentum and effort on the Hill. So
Yeah, absolutely. And thank you, Brian. That was a great opportunity. And I think it's important for people around this call to see that this is, we're getting into right there in DC, having engagement with senators and with House of Representatives. And it's also really important for them to engage locally with theirs and as you said, invite them to host. But we do have a question. So on tariffs, for reference, do we know the previous year-over-year change to imports from China prior to 24? For example, we saw the 36% increase from 24 to 25. What increase, if any, was there between 23 to 24? Do you know
that's a
that?
great question. I will take a look at it. Yes, we can have that. We can have that information going back probably 10 or 12 years. But great, I see it, Roberto. Great question. I'll actually drop a slide in on that and put it up for everyone to take a look at. We the USITC changed how they structure, very frustratingly, their uh, their search mechanisms, but that should be too difficult to pull up. So I'll put it in there, and I believe we have been seeing steady increases up until honestly January of this year. Uh, I have to look back at December and November of 2024, but that's the drop that we saw up until April, where everyone rushed to put more products in. So, but yeah, we'll get that on the slide deck and have it posted.
Wonderful. Well, we are at our time, so I do want to thank Mark and Brian for joining us this morning, as well as everyone with us. This is going to be included in, it's just a nice little visual reminder of all the activities that we have going on within TLMI in 2025. We are sitting here in Q2. It's hard to believe that almost 6 months of the year has gone by, and we still have plenty to offer and regular webinars going on. So as always, you saw in the chat, there was opportunities for you to join the RAC webinars or even just follow in community updates like this. So please be sure to do that to stay up to speed with what's going on, and never hesitate to reach out to Brian Vickers. He's very, very much willing to do so. So I appreciate everybody staying today and joining us. If you have anything else that you're interested in hearing about, please reach out to us at TLMI. And here's an opportunity just to share, more with us here. But I want to thank everyone this morning for joining us. And if you do plan on joining us for the next session, which is a market update with Avery Dennison, then you will have to join the session 2 link that you received, and it'll go into a separate room. So again, thank you, Brian. Thank you, Mark. And I hope everyone has a fantastic day.
Thank you, everybody.
You all appreciate it.